and he's going to house it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO to break down, not only to recap our good year 400, talk about our bets, talk about our DFS plays, and then look ahead to the AdventHealth. It's Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
What's going on, Kyle? Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this race. I mean, we're getting back to another traditional mile and a half where Kyle Larson was one of the most dominant drivers we had ever seen in recent memory on last year. So it'll be interesting to see how he does and then how Hendrick Motorsports does in general, because they've been driving a lot better of late, and they should have had another win last weekend if it wasn't for Joey Logano being a POS and joining the ranks right up there with Brad Keselowski.
Yeah, and your hatred rose as he took your guy William Byron out. I know that for a fact. Let's talk Darlington for a bit. It was a very interesting race. I don't know if I'd classify it as a good race.
Yeah,
there was stuff that happened. Kyle Larson's car looked great, but they just couldn't keep it on the track. Another frustrating week for us at the betting window. It seems like we're on the right guys. They're in position to do stuff. Ross Chastain was doing great, and then there goes Ross Chastain crashing out. It was a rough ride. Obviously, we found our way to get a few winners and not make it an absolute bloodbath. But if your guy finished on the track, you were very happy. And then, of course, as we trash talk Joey Logano the entire week, starting from jump, fading
and we
him
called
as
it
much as possible, looks good and gets the pole and then wins the race. So, but yeah, so I guess let's pull up our cards, talk about it, get ready for that swift kick to the nuts, and we'll get on and upward. So as you can see, Kyle Larson did not win. Denny Hamlin also did not win. Kevin Harvick managed to pull a top 5 out of his butt, so that was cool. Eric Jones was fine, but not good enough to do anything for me there. Stenhouse found a way to top 10. I had Verstappen. Verstappen won the F1 race. That was a nice parlay leg. Unfortunately, parlay legs cashing don't give you anything, so that is what that is. And obviously Harvick got the top 10 and one of my good best bets. So, if Logano doesn't win the race and he's the one getting crashed out, maybe I win both those, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Much of the same to you, although you did a little bit better than I did, which is nice. You had the Harvick top 10, you had the Reddick top 10, you had the Christopher Bell top 10. Good week for top 10 betting.
Yeah.
Tyler Reddick also got that top 5, and Christopher Bell over Chase Briscoe. So both your best bets hit, which is huge.
Well, considering haven't hit a winner in a few weeks and the units continue to go in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's not great. But I with the new cars, like I feel like we're learning a lot, and hopefully as the season progresses, obviously we'll get better, have a better understanding of an expectation. Obviously a lot of more wild card winners has made this thing interesting.
And too, I mean, we could get a little bit softer on the betting cards, and
that's no fun. It's fun.
Who the hell wants to do that, man?
Exactly.
I want a ton of action on these races.
Yes, bet winners, throw money at the board. As you can see, Brian is beating me 5-4 in show bets.
That is because early in the season, the last few weeks, Kyle has, I think, won 3 of the last 4. So,
yeah, and you've been pretty solid in your best bets. My best bets have not been as strong, but I've also been probably far too aggressive for my own good. But that's okay. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to find winners. We're trying to have fun. We're trying to enjoy the sport we love. Yep. And keep things interesting. We'll jump over and talk a little DraftKings.
We cashed.
Yeah, so this is our shitty lineup, which we talked about this too. We said fading Kyle Larson, who was over 40% rostered, could be an interesting way to go. Set yourself up for a lot of potential.
Yep.
A lot of people getting wiped out, and sure enough, there goes Kyle Larson. So that was good. Truex also not so much. Back to 3 cars crashing out with Corey LaJoie getting to only lap 152. Not
Hey, man.
ideal. Ty
Look at that
Dillon,
Ty Dillon. Yeah.
finished 12th. Really, really solid for 5,100. Cindric was fine. He's been kind of a little bit underwhelming the last couple weeks. Our good lineup, however, as I mentioned, we had to get one with Logano because we faded Larson in this start.
Yep.
So we got Logano. Obviously, he was really important. Harvick getting that top 5 was huge. We want to get that chalky plays, almost 60% home, but I mean 70 points. At 8,800, it's pretty damn good. Our boy Stenhouse started 26th, finished 8th, got 55. That was solid. Custer didn't finish the race, but still almost got 20 points. For a guy who started at 6,300, I mean, I'm not going to be too upset. And then really just Chris Buescher, if he could have done a little bit better, I might have been.
I feel like, though, Buescher at 6,900, almost getting 30 points is probably worth the salary.
True.
And I think the thing that killed this lineup was Denny Hamlin getting caught up in that accordion crash really late in the race. That if that doesn't happen, I mean, Hamlin was running inside the top 10 the entire day, inside the top 5 pretty much the whole race. He finished, I think, 3rd and 6th in the first 2 stages or something of that nature. So he was up there.
Yeah, 2 weeks of looking really strong and getting caught up in stuff that wasn't his fault. But them's the breaks. That's NASCAR for you. We get to get back on the wheel this week and head to Kansas, and let's look at the early lines as we dive into the what's this called? The
AdventHealth 400.
There we go. Beautiful. Love to hear it. We'll start with the outrights. We'll see if we can get through. Brian and I have actually filled out far too much of our betting cards, so it's either going to be a great week or a terrible week. There is some crossover. There's also a lot of non-crossover, so we'll see how this goes. Let's dive into it, and let's start with the your favorites. You mentioned it kind of off the top, but Kyle Larson is your betting favorite at 6 or 7 to 1. Are you comfortable starting your card there this week?
I mean, he looked great last week in Darlington at a track that we both were on him at 5 to 1. And so it's hard for me to get to that 7 to 1 number. We'll see as the race comes closer. I might jump aboard, but right now I have not added him to my card. That kind of number is going to take me to see it in qualifying and like practice and stuff.
Yep. No, I think that's a good call. It has been an interesting season for him as he looks great at points, but he's also had some frustrating results and definitely not been the guy that we thought we could see, but started on the pole here last year in October and ended up finishing first. Started 32nd in the May race and ended up finishing 19th. Ran up actually a really good race there. Been a really strong performer here. So, the favorite for a reason. Behind him, Chase Elliott, who's been looking really, really strong. Obviously won 2 weeks ago. Our guy Denny Hamlin at 7 to 1 and or 9 to 1 is where I'm going to start my card, and I'm going to take that 9 to 1 price. I expect him to run well in qualifying. I expect that number to sit around 6 or 7 to 1. So I will take that difference and I will start my betting card there.
I think that's a great call, especially at that 9 to 1 number, just because he should be closer to the top of the board at every book with the way that he's actually performed during the race. I mean, you can't always just look at finishing position. And I mean, when you look at his numbers this year, they're kind of ugly, but during races, he's been one of the fastest cars on track. If he could just avoid a problem, we're looking at a guy that's probably going to be inside the top 5 on a consistent basis. So a 9 to 1 number right now is a great jump in, knowing that he's probably going to practice and qualify really well.
Yep. So I just wanted to grab a piece of that. If I only did half a unit initially. So if we, we're talking on Saturday and he is just has a decent spot and There's still 9 or 10-1 floating around out there. I'll probably grab some more of that, but I just felt like a good spot to jump in. And actually, I jumped in again with Kyle Busch, who has looked really, really good. Obviously, there was a lot of drama with him kind of last week and
Yeah.
parking his car. Apparently last year, I think it was at Darlington, he drove into the pits and or into the garage area a little too fast, and NASCAR suspended it or fined him like 50 grand. So, Kyle Busch seems like he's just the worst.
What
Like,
what did I say last week though about, or it was either last week or the week before that, where it's almost like he is that hothead where at any second he explodes, and I feel like that affects his racing
yeah, well,
negatively, not positively, like we've seen kind of Ross Chastain
yeah.
transition all of his aggressive driving into success, whereas Kyle Busch has kind of gone the opposite direction.
Yep, and that's why he makes great sense as an outright bet. I think he can. I think he is a little bit of a diva who likes to have a little drama follow him wherever he goes, but he also can put everything together and win a race and be really
Yeah.
good. And if he can keep all four wheels on the track, I think he'll have a really good shot to finish the race as the winner. Keep rolling down. We hit our boy Ross Chastain. Obviously, last week was not great, but 8-1, 10-1. I once
It's
again on the card.
yeah. I mean, I love him on the on the future that we have him, but
Yep.
now that he's in that 10-1 range, it's getting a little bit dicey and a little bit too short for my liking. As I would prefer to go down to William Byron at 10-1, that same number. I mean, he by all accounts could have won, should have won last weekend, making him the only 3-time winner of 2022. This guy has either popped and and finished really good, or not really finished at that well this season. But at 10-1 for a driver that's been as fast as William Byron has, I feel like that's kind of far too long for how good he's been this
Yeah, he's
season.
really been incredible. And when his car hasn't finished where it probably should have, it's usually been because Joey Logano's hitting him or because of other issues, and not necessarily because of bad driving on his part. But
Yeah, exactly.
Chastain has finished third at Dover, obviously won Talladega, fifth at Martinsville, has done well on the mile and a half style flat tracks like Kansas is. There's a few combinations, obviously, but he has performed everywhere. And obviously, like you mentioned, we're happy to be holding that 50-1 ticket on him to win the NASCAR championship, which
Yes, sir.
after his win, I was like, okay, he's going to be in the conversation. So I'm happy to have it. I don't think he's necessarily going to win, but he got there. And then all of a sudden he wins at a super speedway. And I'm like, wait, we might have something serious here.
And then he continues his
And he just
string of
keeps
top
being
five.
top five, top five, top five.
Yep.
And he's just been so rock solid that, yeah, I mean, we have a very live ticket, especially with Hamlin not looking as good as he has, and Kyle Larson having his struggles, and like this year feels a lot more open than in past years. So having that real wild card, I think, is very, very live.
Yeah, and I wanted to hit on one more point with William Byron. He's top 10 at Kansas in 5 consecutive trips here.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this is a guy who has shown the ability to run near the front of the field. He's been doing that pretty much the entirety of this season, which you can't. It's interesting as we continue on in the 2022 year. We're taking all of the data we have from previous years of racing, but all that stuff is, I mean, you have to take that with a grain of salt because this car has definitely changed the way these guys are driving, the way the tracks are driving.
No, that's 100% correct. Like, there's clearly a difference. Obviously, you want to see drivers who have run well, and kind of in the past, and be able to go back to them. But at the same time, like, this is a different car, and we also we have to look at guys like Ross Chastain who have clearly taken a level jump, and you have to look at guys who may be going in the other direction. I mentioned it on Twitter to you, and if you're not following Brian and I, that's make sure you fix that now. But Brad Keselowski is somebody that in the stats and in the models makes a lot of sense. And maybe when we sit down on Saturday, if he's starting 28th, I'll be a little more interested for DraftKings purposes. But I just he's been so rough, especially the last handful of races, that as much as I want to put his number on the card, I can't do it.
I feel like Brad Keselowski is your grandfather, or Kyle would probably say me, if like a new technology comes out and you're looking at it and you're like, what the hell is this crap? I don't know how to do this. And they just throw it against the wall or something. Like Brad Keselowski looks like an old person driving an electric car that wants to do the driving by himself. And he's still trying to correct it. And he's crashing everywhere. He's spinning out. He's causing other people to wreck. He's been a mess this season.
Yeah, it really feels like this is the final hurrah for him. And he's not even Kevin Harvicking his way into consistent top 5s and top 10s. He's just been all over the board. Last week's winner, Joey Logano, 12-1. You got your guy Ryan Blaney as good as high as 14-1. Alex Bowman at 16-1. I know both of us are interested in grabbing a piece of that. I haven't bet the outright, but you put him on the card. So talk to me about your boy Alex Bowman and why we should be excited about him this week.
Oh, I mean, just you look at past success here. His worst finish over the last 10 is 18th. He's done that twice, but the other 8 races were all inside the top 11, or the other 6 were all inside the top 11. He's shown the ability already this year. He won at Las Vegas.
Yep.
And so it's a very similar type of track. He's been pretty good at these 1.5 miles. Prior to last week's crash where he finished 29th, he had been running inside the top 14 for, what is this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 straight races. I mean, this is a guy who's been a lot better than what we give him credit for, regardless of whether or not you say he's a hack or he backs into victories. He definitely has earned the right to drive for Hendrick as much crap as we give him. And at 16-1 in that car, that's a great number.
Yep. Yeah, it's a compelling number. I wouldn't blame anybody who skips over the Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin bets and goes to, just throw a little bit on Alex Bowman, on Tyler Reddick.
I was just going to say Tyler Reddick is another one who he'll be on my card this week. He's a guy who is so close to a win every single week. He is running inside that top 5, top 3, just right there to take advantage of somebody else's mistake.
Yeah, he's another guy who's really stepped it up a level. I remember last year him kind of competing with Austin Dillon to barely make the playoff and kind of be a top 10-ish driver most of the year.
Yeah.
But he's really taken it to another level this year and has been competitive, has been there. I mean, him and Chase Briscoe, honestly, who is 30-1. Obviously, I don't think we're going to quite get there, but both of those guys have made strides, and we're looking at the future of NASCAR, not only with the Hendrick guys and a few other names, but now Ross Chastain and Tyler Reddick and Chase Briscoe. There's a lot to be excited about, a lot of interesting names who should lead the fields as we progress forward. Christopher Bell, 20-1. You
on the card. He qualified on pole in Vegas. He had some car issue, I think tire issues during that race, to where he still wound up finishing 10th. He's finished 7th or better in 5 of his last 7 races this year. He's qualified on pole twice this year. He's qualified inside the top 3 actually in 3 of his last 4 races. So he clearly has the speed. It's just whether or not on race day, if he can put it together on the track, and his pit crew, which it seems like the JGR guys are very inconsistent, can get their crap together. Maybe we can see him finally get that victory in 2022.
Yep. No, I think that's a very good call. His number really has been all over the place. There's been, as low as like 6 or 7 to 1, as high as, 30, 35 to 1.
Well, I feel like when it opens at this number early in the week, you have to jump on it because he's
Yeah.
probably going to qualify inside the top 10 again, and this is going to
Yep.
shrink down to that 14 to 16 number.
Yep. It's been happening week in, week out, and
Yep.
then he's not finishing the race where he needs to be. So I don't know. I don't know if you feel good about getting a better number before qualifying or a worse number based on how he finishes. Anything below, as we trend down, anything down here that you're considering in terms of outrights?
There's not a lot. Like I am gonna go out on the limb and do an outright on Austin Dillon. I can't get it at this number because obviously I don't have access to these in California, but at 80 to 1, Austin Dillon is somebody who would definitely go on the card, probably for around a quarter unit. He's finished top 10 2 consecutive times in Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
Time before that was 11th. So, I mean, whether or not he can really win the race, I don't know. But at 80 to 1 for a guy who has been running near there the last few races this year too. Who knows? He could accidentally find himself winning the race if something wacky happens.
I mean,
on the
we've
last
seen
lap.
it the last few races. It's been a real, like, the person that was leading at the end didn't actually win the race. He, performed well. If we're looking at, kind of the intermediate mile and a half tracks, was top 10-ish at Vegas and Darlington and Kansas last year, as you mentioned, and Texas. And like, there's been races where he's done reasonably well for a guy that, I don't know that he should be 80 to 1. Obviously, we don't think he should be 20 to 1.
No,
But
I feel like his number's right around that 40 to 1.
Yeah,
number.
if he was 40, 45, like, that would feel a lot more on brand for him.
That's a lot more accurate for
Yeah.
his level of driving. So just
I
jumping
could-
on the 80.
Yeah.
Again, this is going back to what we've been talking about. Like this here, I'm betting the number as opposed to the driver. Like there's something clearly wrong with that number.
Yep. And if you win 1 out of 80 times, you're making
Right.
money. So that's the battle. Let's look at the top 10 market, because there's a few names I want to hit in there. I think there's some interesting numbers. Obviously, we'll have to see how they shift. Let's see here. Okay, cool. So a lot of these numbers are really long, but I do have a few names that I want to make sure we hit on. I'm going to, like, even these aren't terrible. It depends. Like, if you want to parlay it with something, I think it could make some sense. But Alex Bowman at minus 140 is really compelling. Tyler Reddick at minus 140 is compelling. But I'm going to start with Kevin Harvick, who I'm a big fan of this week. I'm not taking him on the outrights just because I found other guys that I like at similar numbers. But I will be hitting him hard on my card. I have both a top 5 and a top 10 on him this week. A guy that's been much stronger than I expected this year, has looked like a driver that can realistically win races. I have the wrong screen. Let me back that
I don't
up.
know if he can actually win, but he's like that boring.
He feels like he can win. And if the fact that he feels like he can actually win, that means he could win. He could get like third. And then all of a sudden your top 5 bets are cashing. Your top 10 bets are cashing.
Yes.
So Harvick at if you can get minus $1.20 or $1.25, I think is a great number. I think anything like but lower than minus 130, I think is fine.
Well, his worst finish here in the last 10 races is 13th.
Yeah.
And he's finished top 5 in 4 consecutive races at Kansas.
Yeah.
I mean, what else do you want for a guy who, by the way, also has won 4 Michigan races since 2018, which is like a little bit of a bigger Kansas track. He ran really well in Vegas this year. He's actually top 5 in over 50% of all of his intermediate races since the beginning of 2019. So, I mean, you're looking at like 1.5 to 2 mile long tracks. I mean, what else do you want in terms of consistency? And you're almost getting him at even money to top 10. Like that's an incredible number.
Yep. You nailed it. That is exactly where my head's at, and a number that I think makes sense. I did take Alex Bowman at -135. Brian and I both talked about why we like him this week. To top 10, that number just feels like, I know it's kind of gross, but dipping in that low, but I think it's a number that makes sense.
Yeah, I think for me, the guy that I'm going to continue to do it until it stops is Tyler Reddick, top 10.
Yep.
If I can get that anywhere near or under like that 150 mark, I feel like there's value there still for a guy who's always running inside that number. And then, of course, I can't pass it up. I'm addicted to banging my head against the wall. Christopher Bell at plus 130 to top 10. Yes, please.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Speaking of banging your head against the wall, I am taking Eric Jones at -105 to top 10. This is a guy that has been really solid this year and has had a lot more top 10s than I think people want to give him credit for. Top 10 at Dover, top 10 at Dega, top 10 at Bristol Dirt, top 10 at Circuit of America, top 10 at California. He's found his way. Obviously, there's been a race here or there where it hasn't been great, but if I can get -110, -105 on Eric Jones just to get in that top 10, I think he makes a ton of sense. So I will be going to him there.
Yeah. Eric Jones is another guy who, if I hadn't bet him last week, he'd probably be on my card again this week. During Darlington, he didn't finish where we thought he was going to, but again, he was running inside that top 10 all day. And pretty much he has the same numbers here at Kansas. Prior to last year and the fall race of 2020, he had top 7 in 5 straight Kansas trips. So, I mean, you put together what he's doing this year in terms of on speed or on track speed and his history at Kansas. And this is a guy who's probably going to run near there the whole race.
Yep. After we talked about Austin Dillon,
Yep.
On the card, top 10 on the card makes too much sense.
That number is indicative of somebody who has probably ran inside the top 10 once during the season and is kind of running like the low teens at this track, but he's top 10 a couple of times here. He's top 10 multiple times already in 2022. So getting that at 2-1, that just makes too much sense.
I agree. And that's why it's on the card. I don't know that I love any of these other numbers. Is there anyone you want to look at before we jump to top 5?
Well, I will just mention, so Bubba Wallace's number, I know he hasn't been finishing necessarily inside the top 10. I think he's only done it once this season. But this is a guy who's been racing a lot better at tracks that he traditionally doesn't do good at. We're talking about him running in the low teens and inside the top 10 at tracks where he's not good. It's like last week at Darlington. Nobody expected him to be running, in the top half of the field. And he was there all day until, of course, he gets crashed or gets wrecked. But Bubba's been running really good this year, and getting him at over 3-1 for a top 10. That's a good number for somebody who's shown a step up in his game this year.
Yeah. And that car has been pretty solid. But as you mentioned, it hasn't been the greatest start to the season. But he is a super speedway racer, but he's trying to show that he can be a little more versatile than that. So that I think 3-1 at a guy for a guy to top, just the top 10, I think is fine. Let's look at the top 5 market. There's a couple numbers I want to get down on there. We will go to top 5. We'll see what it's mostly DraftKings. We have some BetMGM too, which is nice. These are good numbers for a guy who's been as strong as he has. I'll take that -120 and throw that on the card for Kyle Larson.
Woo!
I just I know it hasn't been great, but I'm not betting him to win. I just need him to finish in the top 5. And at -120, I think it's a reasonable target to have. We can keep scrolling down the top 5 market and find some other values. Kyle Busch is interesting, and in fact, he will go on the card. If you can get to BetMGM and get that even money, I think that makes sense. I put that on the card this week. Ross Chastain plus 125 is not terrible. I think I just went outright with him. I haven't decided if I'm going to go sprinkle the finishing positions. The next number I really want to hit on, and stop me if you see numbers that you want to talk to, but Alex Bowman 2-1 top 5 might be one of my favorite bets of the week.
Yeah, no, I mean he has the ability there. I feel like him and Tyler Reddick are kind of the guys this week who could surprise and finish inside that number and maybe even win the race.
Yeah. Yep. And at 2-1 makes a lot of sense. I also double check. I believe, Kevin Harvick at plus 225 also made the card for that top 5. So I think, these guys all have a ton of potential. And if I like them to win the race, and I don't think it's a Ricky Stenhouse situation where it's either first or last, I think, looking at top 10 or top 5 is a great way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to go to Austin Dillon to top 5. His number is 10-1 at DraftKings. I know the likelihood is not great, but considering I love him to top 10 at 2-1, just going up to that next level at 5 times the payout for 5 spots.
Yep.
Talk about value. That's incredible.
Yeah, and Austin Dillon, like it could be fun to bet him to win the race because that number is nice and big, but it's a lot more reasonable to take, some of your money, bet on top 10, bet on top 5. And if you win the top 10, then great. And if you all of a sudden top 5, you're feeling amazing. 10-1.
Exactly.
You're feeling, I mean, that's better than like, a bunch of the guys. Like I'm betting Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Ross Chastain all at 10-1 or worse. And you just need him to finish top 5 for the same price. So obviously there's a lot less chance of, there's a reason why he's priced like that, but he feels like he should be 6 or 7-1, and he's 10-1. So that's a good number.
Well, it's interesting though too because he's 2-1 to top 10, and then 10-1 to.
That's because they expect him to be like 8 or 9. Like they don't think he'll be in the top 5. Like the fact that Keselowski is 5 or 6 or 7-1, and he's 10-1. That's kind of bananas for me. Cindric, some of these names just from the last couple weeks just give me the heebie-jeebies.
Hey, last week though, I will say Justin Haley, for instance, who the hell would have guessed that he was going to finish where he
amazing.
did? So, I mean, that just goes to show you, man, this year is complete wackiness.
100%. All right, Brian, we ran through some of our bets. We ran through obviously last week's results. There's only one thing left to do this week before we get ready. And obviously, reminder, we are back Sunday morning. We will have your DFS picks. We will have all of our finalized betting cards, give you more best bets. And also make sure you smash that thumbs up, hit the like button, do all that stuff. If we get to 500 subs before the NASCAR playoff, we're a third of the way through the season right now. We need to get to the 500 subs before the NASCAR playoffs. I have a Christopher Bell signed mini helmet that will be going to one lucky listener. So make sure you subscribe so you can be entered in that contest when we do that giveaway. Brian Twining, I need one thing and one thing only from you. What is your best bet for the AdventHealth 400 sitting here on a Wednesday afternoon?
You've heard me say his name a million times already today, so of course I'm going to have to do it. Austin Dillon, top 10 at 2-1. Give me that best bet right now. Wednesday night as we're recording. It's happening.
Kevin Harvick, top 10, minus $1.20. My best bet heading into, on Wednesday before, there's a good chance he could be involved somehow for my best bet going into the race day as well. But as we sit right now, I love where he's at. I think he's running really well. Obviously that top 5 last week was really nice. I think he performs strong once again. His car looks really fast. He looks really good, and I cashed that ticket. So I will take that top 10 bet. I will go to the window, and I will thank everybody on Wednesday when we talk next week. That's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. Good luck with your bets. Get those bets in. Let us know down in the comments what you are betting this week.
Grab some of these numbers before qualifying too, because there will be a lot of movement.
Yeah, if you really like some of the numbers, you should jump on it while you have the opportunity.
Like Austin Dillon.
You could try some Austin Dillon out, try some Kevin Harvick out, some Alex Bowman out. Sprinkle it, baby. We'll talk to you guys on Sunday morning. Enjoy the rest of your week and have a good one.